Hello friends, this is a short biography of Sister Ellen G. White, co-founder and pioneer of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. In her memory, artist Glendon McFarlane completes this portrait, along with a few of her writings for the last days. Ellen Gould Harmon White, née Ellen Gould Harmon, was born on November 26, 1827, in Gorham, Maine, United States. She died July 16, 1915, in Helena, California. She was an American religious leader who was one of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and whose prophecies and other guidance were central to the denomination's early growth. Ellen Harmon sustained a serious injury at the age of 9 that left her facially disfigured and for some time unable to attend school. Her education ended with a brief period at the Westbrook Seminary and Female College of Portland, Maine, in 1839. The following year she underwent a religious experience at a Methodist camp meeting, and she was baptized in 1842. A short time later she followed her family in becoming a congregant of William Miller, a Baptist preacher, who was preaching the imminent return of Christ fixed for October 22, 1844. Undismayed later by what is known as the Great Disappointment, since Jesus did not come, Sister White retained the Adventist view. In December 1844, Ellen Gould Harmon experienced the first of what she would later claim were some 2,000 visions. She began an itinerant ministry to discouraged Millerites, bringing news of the future and messages of encouragement gained from her visions. In 1846 she married Elder James S. White, a Seventh-day Adventist minister. They traveled together through New England and gradually moved farther afield, spreading the Adventist faith. She published a sketch of the Christian experience and views of Ellen G. White, in 1851, and then her supplement to the Experience and Views of Ellen G. White in 1854. After the Whites moved to Battle Creek, Michigan, in 1855, that city became the center of Adventist activity. Representatives of scattered Adventist congregations met there in 1860 and adopted the name Seventh-day Adventists. 3 years later the church adopted a formal denominational structure. Throughout the work of organization and the establishment of an Adventist orthodoxy, and Sister Ellen White's visions were a guiding force. The scriptural interpretations that came to her were promptly accepted. Much of the church program thus revealed was published in her Testimonies for the Church, which eventually grew from 16 pages in its 1855 edition to fill 9 volumes. Her views on health, especially her opposition to the use of coffee, tea, meat, and drugs, were incorporated into Seventh-day Adventist practice. In 1866 Sister White helped establish the Western Health Reform Institute in Battle Creek. Later, as the Battle Creek Sanitarium, it became famous for its work in the field of diet and health food and was the model for many other sanatoriums. In 1874 Sister White helped found Battle Creek College, an Adventist institution of which her husband was named president. Under her influence the Adventist movement was actively abolitionist before the Civil War, and during the 1860s and 70s White was a prominent temperance advocate. In 1880 she and her husband published life sketches of Elder James White and his wife, Mrs. Ellen G. White. After her husband's death the following year, Sister White lived for 4 years in Healdsburg, California. She traveled and lectured in Europe between 1885 to 88 and was an Adventist missionary in Australia from 1891 to 1900, where she established a school that later became Avondale College. After her return to the United States, White led a movement to remove Adventist institutions from Battle Creek. The college moved to Berrien Springs, Michigan, as Emmanuel Missionary College and named in 1960 Andrews University, and in 1903 the church headquarters and newspaper relocated to Tacoma Park, Maryland. From that year Sister White lived mainly in Street Helena, California.
Sister Ellen G. White wrote about God's judgments on the earth. These are some of the incidents that will come to pass before the return of our Lord Jesus Christ. She stated, "And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book." Daniel 12 verse 1. When the third angel's message closes, mercy no longer pleads for the guilty inhabitants of the earth. The people of God have accomplished their work. The final test has been brought upon the world, and all who have proved themselves loyal to the divine precepts have received the seal of the living God. Then Jesus ceases his intercession in the sanctuary above. He lifts his hands and with a loud voice says, "It is done." God's long-suffering has ended. The world has rejected his mercy, despised his love, and trampled upon his law. The wicked have passed the boundary of their probation. The Spirit of God, persistently resisted, has been at last withdrawn. Unsheltered by divine grace, they have no protection from the wicked one. Satan will then plunge the inhabitants of the earth into one great, final trouble. The people of God will then be plunged into those scenes of affliction and distress described by the prophet as the time of Jacob's trouble. Quoted from the Great Controversy, pages 613, 614, and 616. Those only who have clean hands and pure hearts will stand in that trying time. Now is the time for the law of God to be in our minds, foreheads, and written in our hearts. What leisure time we have should be spent in searching the Bible, which is to judge us in the last day. Let the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ be in your minds continually, and let them crowd out worldly thoughts and cares. When you lie down and when you rise up, let them be your meditation. Live and act wholly in reference to the coming of the Son of Man. The sealing time is very short and will soon be over. Now is the time while the four angels are holding the four winds to make our calling and election sure. Quoted from Early Writings, page 58. Judgments on the earth. When the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and their tongue faileth for thirst, I the Lord will hear them, I the God of Israel will not forsake them. Isaiah 41 verse 17. When Christ ceases his intercession in the sanctuary, the unmingled wrath threatened against those who worship the beast and his image and receive his mark will be poured out. The plagues upon Egypt when God was about to deliver Israel were similar in character to those more terrible and extensive judgments which are to fall upon the world just before the final deliverance of God's people. Says the Revelator, in describing those terrific scourges, there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. The sea became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. And the rivers and fountains of waters became blood. Revelation 16, 2-4. Terrible as these inflictions are, God's justice stands fully vindicated. These plagues are not universal, or the inhabitants of the earth would be wholly cut off. Yet they will be the most awful scourges that have ever been known to mortals. All the judgments upon men, prior to the close of probation, have been mingled with mercy. The pleading blood of Christ has shielded the sinner from receiving the full measure of his guilt, but in the final judgment, wrath is poured out unmixed with mercy. The Great Controversy, pages 627 to 629. It is impossible to give any idea of the experience of the people of God who will be alive on the earth when past woes and celestial glory will be blended. They will walk in the light proceeding from the throne of God. By the means of the angels there will be constant communication between heaven and earth. The people of God will not be free from suffering, but they will not be left to perish. While the wicked are dying from hunger and pestilence, angels will shield the righteous and supply their wants. To him that walketh righteously is the promise, bread shall be given him, his waters shall be sure. Isaiah 33 verse 16. Quoted from the Great Controversy, page 629,